Lilith. Conviction versus guilt, or conviction or embarrassment. Guilt and embarrassment are very interesting parts of the human experience. And I thought it was very interesting to use this when it comes to the archetype of Lilith, because Lilith has been seen as to be strongly feminine, strongly sexual, strongly someone who is not going to take any foolishness. You know, they're going to do what they want to do, however they want to do it. And this kind of archetype can be even displayed, I would even say, I don't know, I think of girl power, you know, just doing what you want, how you really, really want. I wanna. And Lilith is someone who's also very intelligent. But because throughout time, Lilith has gone through a series of things, it would come to a surprise, maybe to some, maybe not, that Lilith wasn't originally a woman. And the oldest Sumerian sources consider her to be a wind spirit. So we're going to look and see how that works, and even how astrologically this looks in your chart. But let's look at the tale of Lilith, shall we? And so Lilith was seen as a wind spirit moving through the air, and you know, no restrictions, just doing what they want, doing anything, right? And this element was seen as the spaces in between, right? Between life and death. And her earliest known form was actually Lilith, right? Lilittu, okay? So she's definitely gone through a lot of things, but I liked the idea, well, not that I liked it, but I just found it interesting that she's gone through so many different phases throughout time. And I think a lot of this gives depth to understanding Lilith when it comes to your birth chart. So where we understand Lilith having this kind of, you know, deep, mysterious sexual element that they like to portray, the fact that in the beginning that she wasn't seen, or this Lilith wasn't a woman, but this magnificent force who was hard to control because it's the wind, of course. It is something that helped me see that there is, because I was thinking, well, the birth chart, you have the masculine and the feminine. There is going to be a guy that's going to look at their birth chart and they're going to see Lilith there. How are they going to unfold that? So we are going to depict both sides, and we are going to look at it from not just as your I guess, if you're born a man or a woman, but like in this masculine and feminine sense. And so, yes, when astrologers talk about Lilith, or the fundamental understandings of Lilith, is the part of us that doesn't want to be controlled. And this is where the idea of its original understanding of being air, it comes into play. And hopefully, as long as you've been watching, if you're new here, hi, you can see that over time, there is absorptions of spiritual entities or ideas or archetypes to fit within the collective consciousness, or how they want the collective consciousness to move. And so, thus we have Lilith. I feel like what's happening when we look at the earlier times, she was considered as a wilderness demon. And even biblically, she wasn't even seen as the second Eve. And I believe when it comes to the first chapters, Genesis 1:27, she is considered and we made them. And I feel that part where they say them is to discuss Lilith, but they miss her out. They don't say, we don't want to say that she was the first Eve. We're just going to say them. And then as the chapters go on, they then say, okay, this time the man rib is taken to create woman, because they think the initial stage was just like, no, why am I to lay under you when we're both made from God? You're not bigger than me, you're not better than me, so why should I be beneath you? And so Adam didn't like that. This is like I guess Jewish folklore, right? Adam didn't like that. He said, what? He said, no, you need to be beneath me when we lay together. She's like, nah, you're not above me. And then she says, you know what? I'm gone. I can't, whatever you're doing, I'm out. Like, and obviously, I mean, naturally, in any kind of relationship, if you're trying to assert some sort of idea or whatever, and you're met with resistance, this is going to make you feel some kind of way. And, you know, she left. And that was that. So that story then became, you know, Adam's dreadful wife. Or we'll just say, to keep it neutral, that she was the first Eve, the OG. Definitely moving away from winds, but she did, in the story, she did kind of fly up, and she used a name of God that she understood could make her ascend, and she left that realm or wherever it was. She never came back. And since then, the understanding of this demon or demonization of Lilith, this kind of has turned into, she's wild, she's a beast, but she's also seductive, she's also, you know, lustful and all this kind of stuff. Very interesting, you know, to then turn this kind of feminine energy and transpose it into this Lilith archetype, because that, even when we look today, there is a lot of friction between the masculine and feminine. And so I found that quite interesting. And so this idea of Lilith in your birth chart, looking at the part of us that won't be controlled. Lilith is conviction. Lilith doesn't feel any guilt or embarrassment. And by now, we know that there are a lot of things and frameworks that push the narrative to feel bad for something. Off the top, there's a guy called Foucault. Anyone that's probably... all right, a lot of people might know this if you're doing a lot of reading at uni or something, but he did Histoire... I think I'm saying this right. Sexuality. Right? But basically how this all began. And he's with sexuality, or the history of sexuality. And I found it fascinating because that was my first stab at it, like of understanding what this is all about. And even around your sexuality, there is this understanding of guilt. And this is why the Lilith is so important when it comes to your chart and where that is being shown. What are the highest things in this framework, in this structure, these policies of life? Like, what is holding us? Is it religion? Is it sexuality? Is it the rules? Is it... And this is not to say, ladies and gentlemen, that you should break the rules. But I'm just saying that there are things that have been pushed to us so that there is discipline, there is order, right? So again, very Martian, very Saturnian. This is like, well, you know, you got to give some, you know, it is what it is. Like, if we want order, some things have to give, you know? That's how I see it anyway. And so, it is slightly strange, but then not at the same time, that this figure who becomes a woman later in history, but starts out as a gust of wind consciousness, is refusing to settle to form, even across time. It's refusing every single time. And I guess when we see it from another angle, Lilith is like the breath before embodiment, right? In astrology, that reads as the instinctive proverbial truth in the chart, and the thing that moves before the mind decides, which is, again, looking at your chart, what is instinctual to you? What is something that you're unapologetic about? Because that is Lilith. And yeah, I definitely went down a couple rabbit holes when it came to Lilith. But yeah, in some strands of early Jewish mysticism, Lilith wasn't feared because she was quote unquote evil. She was feared because she knew the secret names of God. This is like where she goes, look, bye, Adam. I don't know what you're doing, but you can't try and control me through whether it's intimacy or whatever. You can't. I'm gone, because we're both made equally the same. And this is where the change biblically, where he says, he goes to God and says, look, I don't know look, Eve is moving different right now. We need to do something different. And he said, okay, well, let's make the woman from you so that you are then front and then she is second, and which is so interesting. Like, I mean, we could deep dive into that, just that whole chapter of Genesis 1 and 2 just alone. But we're talking about Lilith across the board. And the idea in terms of these names was that if you know enough of these divine names, you could slip in and out of the boundaries assigned to you. So because Eve knew this, so this starts to take away from this just, this is a deep and sensual sign, and actually someone highly intelligent to know these divine names. Again, this is Jewish folklore, ladies and gentlemen, which is debatable, because even there are some suggestions, even biblically, that suggest this Eve has been absorbed into other areas, right? But just in a very different way. And it's also knowing that she just didn't, and I'm going to say she because that's how everybody understands Lilith as a feminine. She understands herself in the fact that someone with that kind of knowledge didn't need permission. She didn't need hierarchy, and she definitely didn't need a husband. And I think that was the part. She was like, well, we're both made from the same God. Like, how are you better than me? How do I have to listen to you? Like, how does that work? Sounding kind of familiar to what we're dealing with right now. Where everybody's going to say, wait, hold on. How are you, what? And this, I mean, if you look at my Venus 101 video, this is the idea of trying to balance the Venus 101 and Mars 101, looking at the balance between the two, because essentially that's when you become grounded. But yes. So you definitely can feel that in astrology when you look at your chart and you see where she sits. But it's good to understand the story, where it all began. Yeah, let me put this out the way. And I guess, we're looking at your chart. It's looking at it from a sense of that area is refusing to stay small. It remembers something instinctive. It's an impulse. It's a natural impulse. And if it's an impulse that maybe even you look at your chart and you think, oh, I don't like that part of myself. That's the part that you're supposed to lean into, because that's Lilith. Lilith is that, I think the cover up or the mask is all this, seductive, blah, blah, blah. But when you go deeper, and again, the condition of the mind of what we think is, can sexuality exist with intelligence? If we go deeper, then you start seeing, okay, right, this is what it's really about. I shouldn't be embarrassed by this. I shouldn't feel guilty. I shouldn't feel, do you see? So Lilith's earlier form is something to, I guess, yes, the in-between. And when you think about how cultures across time want to put everything into categories, as we see now, even if we're signing those forms where we have to say, what nationality or what ethnicity we're from, we've got to sign the numbers, but everything needs to be categorized. And so when you have someone like Lilith who has no category, much across time, these scholars, they're very intelligent, right? They're like, yeah, so right now we're doing, divine, not divine. We're doing male, we're doing female, we're doing obedient, we're doing rebellious, we're doing holy, we're doing unholy. Where does Lilith sit in all of our little boxes? And actually, she has nowhere to sit. So they're like, okay, if it don't make sense, she becomes a demon. That's the rules. It's like, if it doesn't fit with the collective conscious that we want to go into, she will be a demon across time, and we will seduce her, we will sexualize her, we won't see her as intelligent, we'll just see her as a great force that just doesn't need to embody our movement. And so it is what it is, I guess. And see how that looks for you in your chart. See where it stands. I think hopefully you'll find something interesting from that. And just seeing across time how, as humankind, you solve the narrative problem, right? This idea of creating this story of boxes and categories. You solve the problem by turning these archetypes, either absorbing them into other people and things, or you just turn them into villains because it's just easier. They still have a lot of power. We can't deny the power, but this is not working for us. We're going in a new direction. So even across time, you had where are we? You had like 1600 CE. You had more occultic text, art that were starting to draw pictures and this new idea of what Lilith could be. So now she's gone from just a pure elemental being to now a woman, to now a seductive, lustful woman with long hair and, whatever they've depicted as beautiful at the time, but also a bit scary, So Michelangelo, he said, all right, we're going to make her like a half serpent, but with the tree of knowledge. So you see here, the half serpent, people have naturally been, the collective consciousness has naturally been driven into a space of, you must be scared of the serpent, right? Which is also very interesting because serpent represents femininity and it represents knowledge, right? Which is very interesting. But the fact that Michelangelo decided, hey, use a red pen. Hey, look, we're going to accept the fact that she's intelligent. We're not going to deny that. And it also connects to, again, Adam and Eve, right? But we're also going to say that she is quite scary, And much like, the serpent is connected to the lion, is connected to, it's connected to the sun, it's connected to all these kind of like strong archetypes. And in the text, there were poetry. The poetries were very kind of seductive, like, oh, this woman, she will lure into your homes at nighttime and, do with your dreams as she will. And, they started to get very creative about the phenomenal things that happen to the human experience, whether it's nightmares, whether it's, mishaps, whatever. Like Lilith was just like, yeah, let's just say Lilith is part of that problem. right? And so so let's just say, for example, right, you have this idea of using amulets. They would use amulets to protect you from Lilith. So now she's become like, she's a true villain now. It's a Lilith will come into your house. This is the amulet that you need to protect you. And so then it's just like, but she still pushes through every single collective consciousness, every single period of time. She's still pushing through, and still people cannot deny the element of her intelligence, of her power. And so, it's like, okay, fair. And if we look at the principles of, like, let's say humankind, if we are going to look at how people saw talismans or lucky charms or things that makes you feel safe, it's more about the conviction of that idea than the thing itself. Much like if you say, hey, look, if you put this thing on your door, then the idea is that you will be safe, when in reality that is not necessarily the case, and it is more the frameworks, right? If you have a sturdy security system, or if you have whatever, right, that is more it. But I think in those times it was more like, if you feel safer, or if someone's giving you the idea of safety, then symbolically that asserted control over what you couldn't actually control. Do you see? And in Jewish mysticism, angelic names weren't just like labels, right? They were seen as encryption keys to reality. And knowing the right name could alter the rules of the world. So knowing that Lilith knew these things, right? She became a big threat, because she's like, well, then that means you can just dip in and out whenever you want. And we're about control. We're about our little boxes, and you're messing that up, And there's also a part where she is, I guess in a way, she was known as someone who was teaching magic. So that's also fascinating as well. And some of the early mystical texts, Lilith shows up in the same breath as beings who passed forbidden knowledge to humans, kind of like giving a Prometheus vibe, and not necessarily like sorcery or things like that, but more like how to operate through symbolism with intention. So it's almost like there's an inversion of using Lilith as a talisman to ward her away, when actually what she was teaching was to use talismans to bring conviction to yourself. But it is so fascinating, right? It's so fascinating. So yeah, she dealt with the liminal, she dealt with the dream state. And then there's this like a strange pattern where spirits are associated with the night, right? Or kind of like, yeah, she's gonna come and get you at nighttime. And I just feel like all the time that she keeps on getting demonized, even through stages of things like sleep, you just think, oh, when's she gonna catch a break, And I think that's more in the contemporary ages, when the feminist movement started to take a big like boom. But dreams, even, I don't know, even now maybe, well, probably actually not now. In old folklore, Lilith wasn't just like a night demon, right? She was like a dream intruder. I don't know if you guys have watched Sandman. But that's the element that they've put her in, right? She intrudes dream because she is air, she is consciousness, and she can manipulate it. And she almost, like the Sandman, like creating like your internal landscape, or the architecture of your dreamscape. And so because of that, again, that's a very powerful thing. It can be from what I'm reading anyway, it does look like anything that she's good at doing, they flip it on its head to then, again, I guess, weaponize it, demonize it. So in this case, with this idea of her being able to go through dreams and create dream spaces for whoever, now it's saying, okay, well, now actually she's intruding your dreams and it's actually unsafe. And she is, she comes and seduces you, actually. She takes your sexual prowess or whatever. And so you're just like, oh, gosh, Lilith, man, when is this all going to end, And it's just these different identities over time. And I think when it comes to this idea of conviction versus guilt, and to remember there's a part where they say she didn't like babies. And that goes back to Adam and Eve, where they wanted to have children, but because, he wanted to have his way in a certain way, she didn't like it. So therefore she just didn't like humans or the offspring of Adam and his second wife, or the second Eve. And so the story is that she became bitter because Adam went off with somebody else, which doesn't make any sense really when you think about it. Because she left him. So who knows? But so she became, but again, there's this inversion, right? So it's like, oh yeah, she's jealous. She wants to kill the babies, about, with all the humans. She doesn't like them. And so therefore you have this next storyline. And I don't know, it took me time to kind of really understand what Lilith is really saying to us when it comes to astrology, because there's just so much things that she's gone through. And I think now in reflection, I feel like when we do look at Lilith, we would also have to put it in context to where we are at right now. And I think in the most simplest way, that's the best thing to do. And so when it comes to your conviction in whatever it is, whatever house it's in, seeing conviction as a sign of stability, and then seeing guilt as a way for you to be submissive or to submit. And across time, these ideas between conviction and guilt has always been blurred. You can't really sometimes see between what is what, Oh, should I feel bad because of this? Or should I feel convicted of this? Is this helping me? And I think this is where Lilith doesn't really have, in terms of like consciousness, like she's like, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. This is what is right and this is what is not right. We will definitely talk about Lilith in its detriment and Lilith in its more well state, because I think that's also very important. So yes, hopefully, if we understand that Lilith is very, very powerful. Lilith is about liberation. It's about being sovereign, whatever it is that you're sovereign in. And it's about empowerment and not feeling guilty. And if you are feeling guilty, seeing where you can go to convict yourself to say, actually, maybe I shouldn't feel that way. And even the idea of seeing her as a talisman and realizing the conviction of whatever that idea is really purely you and not the talisman itself is the magic. Yeah. So I think Lilith in astrology and even placing it here is very powerful. It's been good to explore. I actually, because I do a ton of reading on mythology, it reminded me of Uranus, right? Where the Uranus was defeated and he was, literally torn apart, but he was a sky god, right? And his body was scattered across the sky or the sea, and became a field of intelligence. So it's almost saying that nothing ever really dies in a sense as well. And this idea that these type of sky gods dissolve into the atmosphere, and Lilith, I guess in a different way, begins as atmosphere from the very beginning. It's just it's a play when we think of how in today's contemporary state, when we think of people doing Tai Chi or people using the prana breath or breath work, and how if we look at air as consciousness or air as something that allows for us to receive information, things get a bit fun. I don't know, like you guys, like first thing in the morning, if you've woken up at like 5 o'clock in the morning for a walk or on your way to work, and that air is so fresh, it's so it's just like a new batch of air. Or like sometimes the air could be, there's a foggy day, it could be very damp, but it's still like that's kind of got a bit of swampiness to it, but like it's still nice, it's still kind of like a different air. So there's different types, and I just found that fascinating that Lilith was depicted as air, as the wind, and the wind has so much different qualities to it. I think the other day I was looking out my window and I could smell the salt in the air, and I was like, oh, where is that coming from? And so the air picks up so much things from everywhere that you would say that air is, maybe some people can allude to this idea that air is something that holds a lot of power. It can go anywhere. You can't stop air. You can't stop air. Air does what it wants, But anyway, I just found that fascinating with that connection with Uranus, the sky god, and Lilith, and they have both this idea of like consciousness or going in between like liminal realms. Let's look at how, lastly, it goes into its feminine form, right? This area where I guess the patriarchy, because across time it looks like the matriarch they were in control, like everything is quite feminine, and then it's flipped, and then everything's about the patriarch or the masculine. Very interesting. So let's talk about how she's been turned into female form, and how, I guess, this kind of masculine dominance and mythology editing, let's say, meet. And with paternal religions, it begins to take over this goddess-based or elemental systems. And it's a tactic. It was a way to, whether that was part of the Renaissance, I don't know, but it was a way to say, this doesn't work for us anymore. And I don't know, like I was watching something and it was like talking about, I don't know, like films or whatever, where they would show like a whole load of women. It's a woman's world. And, back in the day, everybody was just all women were running everything. And then all the men were just kind of like, lowly, and they had to just do everything they said, and they were just there for procreation. And I used to think, oh, that's not fair. Like there's no balance, And even though it's been flipped over, we still don't have balance. So nobody's getting it right, Nobody is getting it right. And I think where Lilith was too big to be turned into a saint, okay, when it was time to merge everybody together, push certain archetypes in certain spaces. And so even this idea of nurturing, they couldn't even make her a mother, because there's something feminine about her, this energy of wind or air. And so, yeah, it was almost like there was no other choice, I guess, to demonize her. And I don't know, like it just feels a shame, but it's just like, okay, I guess I've seen so many patterns of this occurring throughout time that we have to look at Lilith in a feminine sense to say, okay, that's what she is now. Lilith is the feminine, but not forgetting that there are some masculine elements that could be pushed through when it comes to Lilith, and how does that look? Because the shrinkage of the feminine was deliberate. It was like, you don't fit this route that we're going down. And you know, it kind of feels a bit resentful, kind of feels like we can't control you, so we will sexualize you and we will try and control you through that direction, through that avenue. And but yeah, we know you're intelligent, but we're just going to see you as someone that is to be feared and also to be adored, you know. And people have done that across time. When you feel fearful of something, you try and find ways as to how you feel your idea of trying to truncate someone's power can work. So yeah, Lilith is it has a lot of depth to it. But I think now when we're looking at it from an astrological point of view, Lilith is not concerned if you are comfortable with her decision or its decision. Even in this Martian and Saturnian world, it remains sovereign. And I put like Saturnian as in institutions or policing, and Martian as in war and destruction. So here I said, for example, astrologically, if we're looking at Aquarius or Lilith in the 11th house, sorry, if we're talking about friends and connectivity, if we're looking at it in a malefic sense, it creates drama and divide, right? This in terms of the Aquarian energy with Lilith in its detrimental sense, it will create drama and divide amongst large groups for a personal gain. Whereas in its benefic sense, it will be utilizing technology for social justice and doing it in a very Aquarian way, very quirky, very I would have never thought of that kind of way, and very unique. So again, have a look at your chart and see if this is something where it's working well, or there's something that needs to be understood when it comes to your chart. The second example is Lilith in the 8th house in the sign of Scorpio. So in its benefic sense, when it's doing very well, this can look like therapy or wellness initiatives, because this is ultimately about Lilith knowing a lot of stuff and also expanding in that kind of sexual element. Because everything's been inverted, we can see that she probably understands the things that people don't talk about when it comes to these areas, the areas that people have or society has made you to feel guilty about. So because they know how to heal it or know how to work with it, things like utilizing or alchemizing Lilith with Scorpio would make therapy or wellness a good area to be in. And there's also other signs that can depict that as well, but I just chose this, right? Then you have it in its detrimental sense. Again, the knowledge will still be there, the innate understanding of the deeper sides of people, but then now that's going to be used to as an aid to control other people as opposed to healing them. So again, have a look at your chart and see where that sits. So I wanted to give an example. Again, if you've been following me for a bit, I'm only new here. I think this is like my 3rd month here. So I do refer to things like yoga, Bikram a lot because I'm a yoga babe. And on one of my classes. I took a different class this time, and it was very, very insightful. So I decided to draw a layout of because I go to different places. I don't go to, I go to different ones. And I found it. So this is the yoga room. Yeah, this is where we get our little yoga stuff. And generally this place is packed, okay? It is packed. And I think there's a mirror here. And this is a pillar. And so the teacher's mat is there. It's normally in that direction or this direction. And I've highlighted these three because this is where it gets a bit interesting. This is where I was like, oh my gosh, I could use this for my Lilith video. And the other guys are here, right? So this was a very small class. And so generally with a small class, you would look and say, okay, let's stagger myself so that I can still have access to the mirror, which is here. And so I can see myself doing the moves, see if I'm doing the right thing, etc., etc. And so everybody knows the drill. Now, it's also understanding that maybe this guy wasn't aware that he could do that, or because this is also a reality when it comes to some experiences, when it comes to people, all the masculine, they may want to directly come behind a certain individual because they can get a nice view. And so I was here, okay. I would say, yeah, so the girlfriend was here. And the one that we are going to focus on, we're going to talk about so many different elements here when we talk about Lilith. And the guy was here. Now, can you see he's messing up the flow? Okay, look what we're doing here. This is up, down, up, down, up, down. He's supposed to, in theory, be here. Yeah, he's supposed to be there. But he's chose to go directly behind me. So already, I'm not a squirmish person. I'm not like, oh my gosh, this guy. And I'm not, but I'm also very vigilant. And I'm also, I will see things and I'll say, okay. So now I'm thinking, right, the teacher notices, okay? So it's not even just me, the teacher notices, but she's still very hesitant. And so when we're talking about Lilith, we're talking about conviction, and we're also talking about guilt and where those two lie. And really and truly, the girlfriend, her Lilith energy, I don't know, man. She was very capable of doing all the moves. I could tell, because I could tell by just looking at her and her doing some of the moves that I knew that she was very capable of doing them. But because he was doing nonsense, every minute she's going into baby pose, and the teacher every minute is asking her if she's okay, because I can feel it, I can see it. Now, what I do, because I can feel, like let's say if we're doing downward facing dog, when I look under, I should never see your eyeballs meet my eyeballs from this point. I should never see this thing. But for whatever reason, this guy was constantly looking at every single movement I was making. And I was like, yeah, this guy is creepy. And he's giving Lilith in detriment on a big level. And what I mean by that is Lilith in the masculine sense understands their masculinity, but also understands if something isn't right or if something doesn't feel right. And it's about being convicted in that and not doing what I guess history amongst time has been doing to Lilith, is sexualizing it or putting it in a space where it's made to feel more in control of that situation or thing. And so the girlfriend, I was just like, maybe this might be it. Maybe this might be the day that when she sees this, she says to him, you know what? I saw what you were doing. I don't think this relationship's going to work. Or maybe in his sense, he is doing these things Not necessarily because there's any type of attraction to me or anything, but more to say, I don't want this relationship anymore. And this is another thing about the masculine not speaking your truth. Again, this is Lilith in detriment, because you're not saying how you feel. You're not convicted if you want to make that choice. You don't want to speak. Whereas Lilith will say, bye, see you later. I don't like this. We're equal. Sorry, I'm gone. And in fact, I know all the divine names, so I don't need to be here. Sorry, I'm out. And so here, where we understand the girlfriend, she's constantly just trying to recalibrate. She's just like, is this happening right now? And this is a hot session, right? It's probably like 32 degrees, yeah, and it's hot. And so I feel like the teacher, she then said, okay, I'm gonna go to that. She used a pose. It was a dolphin pose, and if you know, you can Google it, right? But the dolphin pose it can be seen as quite suggestive, but it's a very good releasing pose. So I knew she did that. And she looked directly at him when that pose was going into play. And that's when I knew she knew that this guy was moving mad. And so at that point, she goes to the girlfriend and says, are you all right? Because she's been in baby pose throughout the whole thing. I mean, the class is about 90 minutes. And I'm thinking, babes, man, get rid of this man. So then what I do is then I move ever so slightly, because there's a heat panel at the top. I move ever so slightly over to this side, right? Well, not ever so slightly, but I move, right? That, maybe I'm not over there, but that much, like halfway. So I can see at least one eye socket from this guy. So I'm like, I can see you. But I just feel for her. So I'm just like, I don't like it. I don't like what's happening here. So I move, and then I can see, like, he starts to, there's something that he feels a bit small, like he feels seen now, because now I can look at you. And, we carry on with the rest of the session. And as the session finished, everyone's putting their stuff away. And I make sure that I'm just moving outside of the way. And we're going to talk about this in terms of the masculine and feminine. And when we talk about like things like relationships and the things that you have to deal with when it comes to your Lilith is whether you're doing the right thing or not. And whether there's guilt, right? Because I'm sure she feels very embarrassed right now because of what her boyfriend, well, I believe it's her boyfriend, is doing. And I'm walking. I make sure I don't walk here. I walk around like this to collect the rest of my stuff. And you can tell she's standing in front of him at this point, because they're still not moving their bits at the end of the session. And he's looking at me through the mirror, and she's almost like moving her head to block him from seeing me. Babes, get rid of that man. Like, it's doing too much, And I know, like, when it comes to things like the gym and people are like trying to beg for attention, like, oh my gosh, this guy's just really looking at me, blah. And this guy's just minding his own business. We know that there's women out there that use their we will say Venus energy for attention. I am not one of them, babes. I promise you. Yeah. I could feel it. I could feel his eyes searing. You know what searing means? Yeah, like a laser beam going through my whole body. I said, I could feel it. I looked, I saw his eyeballs. Your eyeballs should never meet my eyeballs. It should never. Being behind me, I should always see the back of your head. So I felt for her. But I felt like sometimes when you have certain scenarios like this, you would say to yourself, you know what? I think that's the cherry on the top for me. That's what's going to do it. And yeah, big up the teacher though, because she was always, so then what she started to do is, if like we were doing any kind of poses, she was like, oh, you know, some of these poses take a really long time to do. And like, she's like, yeah, she's going to the girlfriend. She's like, yeah, you got it. Like, look, you got it. And you could see her confidence just boosting up a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, man, because this guy is, wow. Like, I hope that she knows that I'm not here for all of this. The fact that I moved it over, I hope I saw her feeling a little bit more okay, that I'm not, you know, because I could have been really, you know, pushing myself to entertain this nonsense, but no, it's gross. I didn't come here for that. I came here to do my yoga thing. And so the Lilith moments with the boyfriend, he's not speaking up. Yeah, he's not telling his truth. If you don't want the connection, say something. Just say something. Now, for me, I was like, should I have said something? I was like, you know what? There's two things that could have happened. She could have been in that such a state where she'd be defensive. This is all I was thinking. Like, oh, she might be defensive, or so let me not say nothing. Yeah, but I could have said something, right? Right. If I see something that doesn't look right, yeah. And the girlfriend, I would say, her Lilith moment was, yeah, she is in detriment because she, unlike Lilith, bounced. She said, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be underneath you and we're both made equally. What is this? But she says, I guarantee you, well, not guarantee, I don't know. She's going to stay with that situation. And so even me saying anything, it doesn't do anything it doesn't do anything for anyone, right? She saw the whole thing. Everything was said in a very unspoken way. Actions speak louder. So yeah, her Lilith moment was, but her brain was definitely ticking. When she was going in them baby poses, she was thinking about things like. So I hope she works something out. I don't know what to call this. I don't know what a Lilith moment would be. I feel like she would speak about it, like, oh, I saw you looking at that lady or whatever. Or maybe she won't. Maybe she would be, I would say just it's in detriment. I'll just say detriment. The teacher, oh man, big up the teacher. She was trying to give her energy. She was trying to give her positive vibes. But the teacher, it's not a business, you know? And it's not my business either. Like, her business is to do yoga. And it is one of those things. But I found this very interesting because, yeah, the boyfriend is either not speaking or he is taking advantage of her lack of conviction in herself. And he's taking advantage of that. And should she decide that she wants to get rid of him, he wouldn't like that. He likes the idea that he can feel like she will always need him or something like this. And this is where we have Lilith with this feminist energy of leaving Adam, right? Of liberation, of sovereignty. Because gone are the days. Which leads me to this article that was circling around everywhere. It was a Vogue article by a writer named Shantae Joseph. Is having a boyfriend embarrassing now? Now, obviously, when we're talking about Lilith and we're talking about its feminine sense, I wanted to look at it from both feminine and masculine. So here we've looked at the more feminine and masculine elements of how we can empower ourselves through Lilith. And yeah, and I might actually put something in the comment section, just expanding more, because I know I've written some notes more about Lilith in the masculine sense, in its kind of positive sense and its detrimental sense. So I'm going to do that. So what I took from that, right, is women's online identities centered around partners and considered social leverage. And this rhetoric was repeated a lot throughout, just worded in different ways, which is interesting, right? It's something that it has it has been demonized to want to connect or be with your partner. And I think this is almost like there's no winning, right? You're with somebody, it can get demonized. If you're not them with somebody, it can get demonized, you know? And I just think it doesn't matter. It's always about balance, but it's also balance between Venus and Mars, but also about this kind of Lilith energy of being convicted about what it is that serves you in its highest sense. And not being afraid to know that, just like with Lilith, when she left, wow, the demonization just said, right, let's go. This is what's going to happen to the first Eve. She's going to be a wilderness demon. She's going to be the dreadful wife of Adam. She's going to be the demon of the night. She's going to go in your dreams, take your children. That's what you get for leaving Adam. And so when we come here, you know, it's not easy. Like in your relationship, you have fears of evil eye because, you know, if you can have a successful relationship and you've been together for a long time, a lot of people are like, you know, they that will naturally come, and then you feel fragile because of that. But you need to be convicted. Hey, look, I've been with this person for a very long time. We've gone through it. Look, sorry, you're not going to make me feel guilty or bad because, you know, you're going through a different experience than me. And you know, some people could be like, well, at least I have a man. And it just be like, that's the more detrimental Lilith side, right? Because it's not about comparing and feeling, but everyone's feeling attacked from different oppositions, right? And so when we think about conviction through Lilith, or Lilith being this kind of, I guess, talisman of conviction, we see this playing out real time. And even this idea of using the word, I guess, the masculine being embarrassing is I guess it's clickbait, I guess, but it's exploring something that is happening in real time, that happens often. You know, this poor lady, I don't know what she's going to be doing. You know, so, you know, they noted men being cropped out of media footage. Being with a man is a guilty thing to do, that they said. It's a lot. It's a lot that, and this is it. When I think these intelligent scholars were like, yeah, we're gonna constrain a lot of things because there's a lot of rules of what you should be, what we believe is the best way to go. And then maybe someone says, yeah, but what about if this happened? What if that happens? Okay, well, we'll just demonize them. We'll just demonize them. It's nothing, you know? And so sometimes you are in spaces and situations, much like, I don't know, with this girl, perhaps you stay in things that maybe don't serve your truest conviction of what it is that you want to be. And now from the article, their perspective is that it's no longer seen as an achievement, which, I mean, it's a blanket statement, but it depends on which collective consciousness you're part of. Like, there are some people who definitely don't see it as an achievement, and there are some people that still see it as an achievement. And it's about the guilt versus shame, I guess, in this way. It's like she's explaining that there's no shame in failing to find a love, or finding love and then also losing the love, right? Because that's also another thing. And that how seeing the romance in single life versus this idea of spinster. Yeah, because that's the theory that I grew up on. It's like, oh, you know, if I don't find somebody, then I'm going to just be here with my millions of cats. Because that was another idea. Like, if you don't have a man and you don't have no kids, you just have a whole load of cats to compensate. Which I don't even know where that came from. Because cats, wow, when we think of it on a spiritual level, they're fascinating individuals. But it's interesting how word carries along and what those what that brings. And this is where, in terms of Lilith and all these pressures, like, oh, when are you gonna have a baby? Okay, so you had a baby. When's your second one? Whatever it may be, right? Or when are you gonna get the new house? When are you gonna do when, what, why? And Lilith just says, no, I don't like this. Bye. This doesn't fit. This doesn't fit to what I'm doing. Conviction. So I was very entertained by this idea of demonization. Like when it don't fit, you just demonize it, And I think that's why I guess those who are single have a lot of pressure to feel the need to be with somebody, right? Just by any means necessary. And then some are just saying, you know what, actually, I don't really care. It's not that, And I think that's what can put strains on other relationships, because they're right now, they're in center stage. Everyone's seeing if they're going to make it or not, and it's tension everywhere. And so, yeah, you can definitely applaud those who find the balance of their conviction through each other, So what I wanted to go through is this understanding of demonization and how the idea of maybe debunking this demonization aspect. I don't know. I title it Lilith demonized to blot out a truth that didn't fit the new initiative. So I wanted to dive more into that. And then the Lilith in its masculine sense again, because I don't think it's been pushed out enough. When it came to Michelangelo, he depicted Lilith as like a snake and a woman, very sensual, very dangerous. Even Lilith has been an owl, ladies and gentlemen. So, a lot of things, but always kind of like, if we are going to applaud her sensuality, let's make it scary. If we're going to applaud her ability to be in all these liminal places and thresholds, let's make her go through all of this at nighttime, where it's all scary and dark. And so I really wanted to look into that, because I think as a collective, our consciousness is definitely programmed to associate any kind of ideas of what has been demonized without looking at the backstory of why that happened in the first place. And then maybe we can debunk this idea of demonization to certain things, I would say, to a degree, right? Right. So amongst my reading, it is fair to say that the narrative, when it comes to observers that write books and have given ideas to other traditions and cultures, they have been looked to be deemed as savage or, wild, beastly, whatever, right? So there was an excerpt from a book by Nathaniel Isaac, and it's called Travels and Adventures in Eastern Africa in 1836, or written in 1836. And they talk about Zulu warriors, war songs, war dances. And here, so this is what he says. He says, the warriors now commenced their war dance and leaping and shouting with the most furious gestures as if already engaged with the enemy. And I have read other things from, more of the African perspective, or the African writers that say, look, this is not what's actually happening. And those of the Western lens, or looking at it from a different perspective, because it creates, it creates divide. It's very Saturnian. It's very rigid. It's very like, well, you don't fit into the narrative that we want to push out. So we're going to use the words like, because I'm sure they're commissioned to say, write about, go here and write about these things, right? So rage, frenzy, wild, irrational, savage are kind of the words when you don't fit into the conforms of a new agenda or a new movement. And so I found that interesting, because this again shows this depiction of this area of Lilith, who was once the wind, who was once without bounds and just is, to this kind of lustrous sexual woman. And so I wanted to kind of like anytime you look at Lilith, always see it as anything that you feel demonized, anything you feel guilty about, it's about empowering yourself through that, because you can naturally exist in whatever house Lilith is in. You can naturally exist there and hopefully not feel guilty about it. Someone like to give different examples, ladies and gentlemen. So I looked at what was actually happening, right? So we have so this is the Western lens, I guess, and what is actually happening when we come to these warriors and war songs and war dances. We have the Yoruba Egungun, you have Zulus who work with group consciousness or ancestral group consciousness, which even when I read up on that, I was like, that is powerful. Oh my gosh. And then you have the Maori, the Haka, like, wow. You know, the ones that like stamp their feet, you know what I mean? The Hackers, the Haka tribes. They use ancestors, they use stamp their foot. And I think other tribes do this as well, to respond or activate the land or activate the earth. And they use their breath, which again, the breath work is something that we understand as humankind. This is something very powerful to us. I guess it could be seen as consciousness in itself, and we're interacting with it all the time, right? So, and there's different depths and densities of it. So that's also there. And then in Japanese, you have kabuki, the kabuki mask that invokes spirits or mimicking the spirits of whatever they're playing at that time. And then I also put in, just for fun, because I think this is something that doesn't have a lot of information on, but it has so many connections to what I've researched. So I just thought I'd put it here for the archives. So we had Jab, which is in Grenada, but it's in other areas, in St. Vincent, it's in Martinique, it's in Trinidad. This idea, but we're gonna expand upon that here, right? And I've seen this as masculine, Lilith in its masculine element, and in its benefic sense, if we can say that, because Lilith is still very powerful, but it's still very esteemed as dark, right? But its darkness is actually very strong. So with each of these, what do they have in common? They all use some type of mask, right? And the masks are used as a way to say, I guess, to bypass this idea of convincing yourself that you are no longer human. When you wear this mask, you are human and you are all, in your astral sense, one of your ancestors, you know? So everybody kind of indoctrinates that. So Maori, they paint their faces or literally tattoo their bodies to depict and to be this essence, and it is warrior-like. And I guess at times seeing it, not necessarily that they're going to always fight, but there is something in the liminal or astral that they're almost conjuring in a way. And I guess when you come from a different lens, you're going to look at that. And even the person that's commissioned him to do that, they know why they're commissioning him to do these things. But when you're looking at it from a perspective of just looking at it, you're like, this is not something I'm used to. Why are they stamping their feet? Why are they wearing these type of clothes? Why are they making these sounds? Like, what is going on? I am not used to this, you know? And so, yeah, you can see what was trying to be, what was going on there. But yes, the war is not, in terms of this warlike dance, it's not always like a physical war. It could be psychological, spiritual, communal, something to strengthen this astral realm, right? Which I find, again, it's very powerful. The more I understand it, I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So like many of your indigenous tribes, as even when I do like lots of dance, and even when I think of these steppers in America, like that evokes something as well, like and I haven't had the time to delve into where that could come from, but It may just definitely come from, some other shared cultural experiences, or even just native understanding of the human body and how we can evoke and empower ourselves as a collective by using movement and dance. And so, and breath work, right? It's always about words and sounds and using the breath to interact with the air around you. Like, it's always about that. And everybody's using it in different ways. And I find it so fascinating. And again, with this Lilith area, there is conviction in these moves. There is this understanding of like, I follow my brethrens, I follow my sisterins, I follow them to evoke what needs to be done here. And it can be felt. There's not necessarily someone describing it to such detail that it's like, okay, step 1, you do this. Step 2, you do this. It just is. It's like, that is the energy of this. And this is where we have this Lilith instinctive behavior of like, it's a knee-jerk reaction, But, I like to break things down as much as physically possible. So I did some connections where the mask area it dissolves the ego. It talks about the embodiment of Lilith. The movement is where Lilith's actions are felt. And then this mockery, which is very interesting, where we talk about more in this jab area. Or in the Maori, like there's that element of mockery. It's definitely giving Mercurian vibes, for sure. And Lilith that doesn't care. They don't care about your feelings. They don't care that you're feeling hurt, Adam. I'm gone. You think you are? I'm not lying beneath you. Yeah, what is this? So anyway, so witness from a large group. So there's also this understanding that you have a congregation that is watching, a spectatorship. This is also proof, right? As well as just the people that are actually participating. So I saw that as Lilith being exposing it, like, and not caring. Even though you are exposed, you don't care. And what else is there? And then connection with archetypal forces. Lilith knows the deeper meaning. And yeah, that could be even when you're looking at your chart. It could be seen as a way that you're looking at whatever house is in, understanding why you are that way, why you have that instinct, why the house that is in is showing instinctively that that's something that is very natural to you, and why that is, right? So yeah, I found that really cool, to connect that with like other, I guess, demonized spaces from other lenses. I found that quite cool. So lastly, this is just more my whimsical segment where I would just like, I just saw it when I was doing research on it, and I was like, yeah, I have to do it then. I have to talk about Jab Jab. So Jab Jab is I want to say, is it a performance? It's something that's done in Grenada, and like I said, in other areas as well, but everyone's got their own rendition of how to do Jab Jab. Now, the common ingredients, let's say, or the things that you use, the main thing that sticks out is the black paint. Now, across time, people have been painting themselves. So we would depict this when we're talking about this kind of liminal war. It's, again, quite Martian, but in a more astral sense. Where could we put that? Yeah, kind of like giving Pluto vibes. But yeah, so you would naturally paint yourself in this black oil or paint, and that is a ritual in itself. You're becoming somebody different. You are putting on a mask. And black, or the color of black, even throughout like maybe even traditions, has been seen as something, even when we talk about physics, where black absorbs and distributes, and white emits. we understand that this idea of blackness is about transmuting something, changing something from one thing to another. And black is very spiritual as well. And so with this idea of them using even black, we can start to see that there are a lot of borrowing from the other cultures. Well, not even borrowing, because it's theirs, you know what I mean? But you can see the ties between the cultures. And so Grenada, when we talk about this understanding of jab jab, it is the word jab jab is meant for the word devil. The French Creole is, which Grenadians do speak, and they also speak English, is diable. Now that's coming from the French word or the Latin of devil, right? So I just put here, the Greek is diabolos, which is slanderer, accuser, and the Latin is diabolus, which is devil, adversary. Why did I add that bit here? Well, in the times of slavery, or when they were freed from slavery, they used what we call a carnival or a masquerade to start to depict or mock their slave masters or slave owners that bound them at the time. So things like chains, which was used to bound them, they kind of just dragged them across the floor. So even that, in the sound of it, it's mocking them to say, look, I'm not even throwing it away in the bush and saying, I don't want to ever see this chain ever again. I'm actually going to use it and mock you with it. Because even this is what they do. They drag it on the floor, and they wear like horns, because what happened with the slave owners, they called them, they basically called them devils. So now this idea of inversion that's happened with Lilith amongst time, these guys are doing the inversion, right? They're saying to themselves, oh, you called us the devil. Oh, now we're going to claim that word and we're going to call ourselves the devil. Now, this understanding of jab is very interesting, because there's no direct tie-in to the word diable, which is the French Creole. However, maybe, this is just my theory, the J is for like J as in to be, right? And they've just shortened it, just as the way they shortened diable from diable, which is the French. I didn't put that in, right? So they've shortened it, they've dropped the E, and now you have diable. And then you have J, and then you have ab, which I think maybe they just borrowed that. I don't know. I don't know, because when I've been reading on it, it's giving tourism history, like yeah, and the slave master, and they're mocking them, and the blah, and just like, where is the deep, like, where is it, you know? Which I think is a shame, because I know even just looking at the pictures, like, you can just tell that there's more to this. And even the crossover, my understanding or knowledge of other tribes, you can see the crossovers, and you can see that there is, because again, these other tribes as well, they paint themselves in black. They do the same thing. So this idea of being in a trance-like state or something like this, they use like these special brews. The red tongue, very, very interesting. But yeah, so overall, this is more, for me, the depiction of Lilith in its masculine state, but it's celebrating, it's inverting things. It's saying, this is how we're gonna shift things and make it right. That's Lilith in its exaltation. That's Lilith in its benefic sense. It's going to say, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. It's the same situation, like, okay, two men, for example, and one of his friends are doing something that isn't okay. And instead of like, yeah, you're right. Instead of just being just to save grace, and you don't want to lose a friendship or whatever, you say, actually, no, that's not okay. Like, why did you treat that person like that? Why would you do that? You know what I mean? Like, that's Lilith in its exalted sense. And I think it probably is easier for the feminine, or those who hold more feminine energy, to be able to step up to say, actually, no, sorry, I don't like that, you know? Bye. And yeah, so I found this kind of inversion of things to say, oh, you want to call me the devil? Okay, cool. Let's go and wear some horns. Oh, you say I'm out here just because I think they called them cannibals at time, and they were like, oh, okay, don't worry about it. And you can see them in this kind of performance, or this performance is like it's about like showing that you're holding the meat in your hand, or holding the flesh in your mouth, sorry, and it's provoking. It's saying, look what we can do. You can't embarrass us. You can't guilt us. We are convicted in exactly who we are. Because this definitely doesn't go conforms to I guess mainstream, I don't know, pleasures or conforming to just mainstream things, our ideals. This is where it gets deep. This is where we were talking about, even I saw like the coffin, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what does that mean? And the only thing I could think of, because they don't talk about this stuff, and maybe for some valid reasons, right? But the idea that they bring this along, this parade, is like they're not fearful of death, right? And they hold death. They can hold it in their hands, right? All of them are going to hold it together. And death is also ancestral power as well, right? So I kind of saw it as the Ark of the Covenant, right? Maybe I'm taking it too far. I don't know what they put inside the coffin. I don't know if they put in things and promises inside there. But, you know, when we think of, I thought of Egypt when they're bringing one ancestor and transmuting that ancestor to somewhere else, or a different area or a different location. That's what it reminded me of. And when I thought of the red tongue that they display, I saw that as like the Hindu Kali, where she has a red tongue and she has the skulls, and she is, which ironically is interesting, she is for the protection of women and children. And Lilith was demonized as to be the ones that hate women and children. So it's very interesting, these archetypes. It could be fair to say that there's some validity or some truth even across time, and even when people are being torn away from their traditions or their core root homes, that it never dies. It can never be broken. And I think that's so powerful. And I'd say poor Lilith sometime, but actually not poor Lilith. Lilith knew what time it was. She knew, and she was up for it. She was up for it. She was like, yeah, sorry, I'm gone. And I know you're going to be in your feelings, Adam. I know you're not going to like this, but sorry about it. I'm not going to be here and I'm playing theater with you to say, I'm less than you, when that's never been, that's not the story. We're the same. And I know that I leave, you're gonna go off and tell a different story. That's fine by me. The people that will find the truth will know the truth and understand it. And I know that that's how it works anyway. So that's it. And good for the wind. Good for the four winds of time. And so I say that to say that is it. We've come to the end, and I hope I've given enough examples for you to really explore your Lilith in your birth chart and where that goes, and maybe even understanding how the air works, you know, and how powerful the air is, and that Lilith was originally the wind. So that's all for now. Take care.